and Jai Hind everyone. So today's science class is presented by me, Shivangi Rawat, and in today's class we will learn about reproduction in organisms. This class would be the first part of the reproduction chapter, and here we will discuss about what is reproduction, why reproduction is necessary. Apart from that, what are the two types of reproduction that we hear about, that is sexual and asexual reproduction, are the differences between these two types of reproduction, and we will also be covering different types of asexual reproduction. Now today's class will be bilingual. That means I would continue the class in English as well as in Hindi. There will be a fair amount of English and Hindi in the class. Apart from that, second myth that you people have is you have to learn everything in science. No, you don't have to do the PhD on these topics. The syllabus for science, especially for defense examination, is very concise. Very concise, very crisp, and you don't have to learn a lot. So if you are asking me the usual question that, ma'am, from where we have to study science, you don't have to buy XYZ book. Just refer to NCERT class 9th and 10th, and that will be enough. With that, let us start our part 1 of reproduction in organisms. So the question which before starting any chapter arises is why reproduction is so necessary. Let me tell you two things straightforward. Reproduction is not a vital life process. That means it is not on the same platform as nutrition, respiration, transportation, and excretion that we have learned in life processes. Plus, if it is not so vital, not so crucial for us, why we are wasting so much energy on reproducing a new individual? As we all know that any life process requires a lot of energy. So if reproduction is also requiring a lot of energy and it is not as crucial as other life processes, then why are we doing that? To answer your question, I will answer it like that. Just suppose if the human population was one upon, let's say, billion of the other organisms that coexist with us. Only one of you, which is one of a particular kind and sitting somewhere in this world, would you be enough to be noticed? No, right? So reproduction on a layman language describes the process by which we can continue our legacy, by which we can prove our existence. So with reproduction, we tend to grow our own population, and that population will increase in numbers. Because of that, it will be considered by the other organisms on the planet. अगर मैं यही चीज हिंदी में बात करूं तो मैं ये बोलूंगी कि अगर आप अपनी स्पीशीज के एक लौते होंगे तो क्या आपको पूरी दुनिया देख पाएगी? क्या आप पूरी दुनिया में अपना एग्जिस्टेंस स्टेबलाइज कर पाएंगे? नहीं, आपको टाइम लगेगा. But with reproduction, what will happen is कि एक particular kind का species will reproduce its new individuals, and because of that, the increase in the population will happen, because of which ultimately you will be noticed by the other organisms as well. So, if I have to tell you why reproduction is important so that the continuation of species is there. So that your species or your kind lives longer, because everybody has to die at some point of time, and if your new individuals will be created, they will continue your species or your kind. Apart from that, I would also say that it happens to stabilize the population as well. That means the number of deaths will come to an equilibrium with number of birds, so that population gets stabilized. It also saves us from being extinct, like other animals, like dodo bird, or let us take the example of dinosaurs. Their entire species went into extinction because there were no reproduced individuals of that species anymore on this planet. So that is all about why reproduction is necessary. Now let me talk about What is reproduction? So, in a very simple language, I can say that reproduction is a biological process where the existing organisms, that means where the parents create the new individuals or the younger generations similar to themselves. And by that, we continue our species, we ensure population stability, and we prevent our species from being extinct. अगर और इजी में बोलूं तो रिप्रोडक्शन एक ऐसा प्रोसेस है, एक ऐसी प्रक्रिया है जिसके द्वारा कोई भी पेरेंट अपने आने वाले इंडिविजुअल स्पीशीज को बनाता है ताकि उसकी तरह की स्पीशीज पहले बात तो सरफेस ऑफ द अर्थ से गायब ना हो, दूसरा पॉपुलेशन में एक स्टेबिलिटी बनी रहे, और तीसरा उसकी काइंड या उसकी स्पीशीज आगे भी फ्लरिश करती रहे। अब हम बात करते हैं दो टाइप ऑफ रिप्रोडक्शन की जिनके बारे में हम लोग बहुत सुनते हैं। पहला है सेक्सुअल रिप्रोडक्शन और दूसरा है एसेक्सुअल रिप्रोडक्शन और वाइस वर्सा। सो एसेक्सुअल रिप्रोडक्शन के बारे में अगर मैं बात करूं तो एसेक्सुअल रिप्रोडक्शन में एक सिंगल पेरेंट का इन्वॉल्वमेंट होता है। इसका मतलब जो भी पेरेंट होगा either male or female will be single parent, and from that single parent you will get your new individuals or young generation. As we all know, the young generation is now a part of a single parent, therefore that new generation will be the exact copy of their parent because there was no variation. There was no other individual involved. So whatever is produced will be the exact copy of the parent. And that is asexual reproduction for you all. Now, there are so many different types of asexual reproduction, like binary fission, in which the parent breaks into two, or it splits into two individuals, forming two daughter cells. We will learn about all these types of asexual reproduction further in the slides also. Second one is budding. In this, a new individual grows out from the parent individual. So that means that the new or younger generation will be a part of the parent itself. Then there is fragmentation also, where the parent individual breaks into pieces and these pieces then develop into a completely new individual. Now, talking about the offsprings that are being produced. In asexual reproduction, the offsprings are clones. Now, what do you mean by clone? By clone, I mean the exact photocopy of their parent. That means they are physically, genetically identical to the parent individual. Now, let us talk about sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction is a little contrasting with the asexual reproduction, as you have already guessed. So in asexual reproduction, there will be two parents. Okay. So two parents could be male and female, right? So one will be male and other will be female. This is female and this is male. These male and female individuals will produce two different gametes. One will be male gamete and other will be female gamete. And these male and female gamete will fuse together to form or create a new individual. In case of humans, these male and female gametes are respectively known as sperm and egg. And these sperm and egg further combine to form a new cell called zygote. And from this zygote, embryo is formed. And this embryo will then become fetus, and from fetus, it will develop into a young human or a small baby. I hope that is now clear. So in sexual reproduction, what happens? There is a fusion of male and female gamete. In humans, this male and female gamete is known as sperm and egg. They combine together or they fuse together to form a single cell called zygote. The zygote further develops into an embryo further develops into a fetus inside the female womb, and then when it gets out of the female womb, it is formed into a new or a young individual called young human being or baby. Talking about the offsprings. Now, as we know that in this fusion, there is the involvement of male and female, both types of genetic material. So there would be some genetic material that would have come from male gamete and some of it may have come from female gamete. That means the genetic material of both the parents are fused together. Because of that, it results in genetic variation. That means you will definitely resemble your parents, but you will not be the exact B copy of your parent. If I have to give you one example, just suppose sometimes your relatives come and say that you resemble your mother, maybe, but your brother resembles your father, or vice versa. Now, why it is so? It is so because the involvement of the two gametes will result in some different types of recombination. Okay. For example, you may have gotten 80% of your mother's characteristics and maybe 20% of your father's characteristics. So you will be more resembling to your mother than your father. But in your brother, it could be different. Because of these recombinations, though we resemble our parents, but we are slightly apart from our parents, and this results in genetic variation, where we resemble with each other, still we have our own uniqueness to us, or we resemble but we are a little different from each other. Now, if I have to talk you through the organisms which reproduce through sexual reproduction, they are humans, then we have plants as well. So plants also reproduce through sexual reproduction, and that we will discuss further. But before that, let us once more see the difference between sexual and asexual reproduction. So with this table, it will be easier for us to connect on the basis of sexual and asexual reproduction. So in sexual reproduction, we can say that there is a fusion of male and female gamete. Whereas in asexual reproduction, there is no fusion. That means the offspring will arise from the parent itself. Now, in sexual reproduction, there is usually two individuals involved. That means there are two parents involved. Whereas in asexual reproduction, there is only one individual involved. And usually we say that the young ones are born from females. That's why the one individual may be called the mother cell or the mother, and the young individuals will be called daughter. We'll talk about this later. But again, in sexual reproduction, there are two parents involved. In asexual reproduction, there is only one individual or one parent involved. Now, talking about the individual produced through asexual or sexual reproduction. So, in asexual reproduction, the individuals that are produced will not be the exact copies of their parents. There will be some variations which are present among themselves. Okay, so they will be resembling to their parents, but they will be slightly different from them and from each other as well. But in asexual reproduction, the individuals which are produced are so much identical to their parents that they are called clones. Now, what are clones? Clones are the individuals which are physically as well as genetically completely similar to each other. Okay. Now, sexual reproduction, in sexual reproduction, most of the animals reproduce sexually. Both asexual and sexual mode of reproduction are found in plants, but in animals, there is usually the sexual reproduction that takes over. In asexual reproduction, this mode is very common in simple organisms like algae, fungus, etc. Now, sexual reproduction, because there is a fusion of two different gametes and then there is whole gestation period after that. So, it is basically a slow process. Okay. So bisexual reproduction is a slow process because there is an involvement of two parents, then this complete fusion will be there, then the producing individual will grow into a young individual. That whole process is a little slower, whereas asexual reproduction do not involve the other parent. That's why it can be easily done. So it is a fast process. Now let's talk about types of asexual reproduction. Now there are five, six types of asexual reproduction that we will be discussing now. The first one is fission. Now, if I have to talk about fission, fission is basically a sexual reproduction in which a parent organism divides into two or more than two cells. And these cells are known as daughter cells. Now, if the parent will divide into two daughter cells, it will be known as binary fission because bi means two, right? So in binary fission, the parent cell divides into two daughter cells. Now there are different types of binary fission as well. One is irregular binary fission. That means the plane of division in the binary fission could be diagonal, horizontal, radial, whatever it prefers. That means there is no fixed plane of division during irregular binary fission. Here you can see the example of amoeba. In amoeba, the division of two daughter cells could be done from any side. But there is longitudinal binary fission as well, in which the organism divides like this. That means from up to bottom. From top to bottom, it will divide in a vertical plane. And this type of vertical or longitudinal plane division is known as longitudinal binary fission. Now, there are two organisms which show this type of binary fission according to NCERT. One is Euglena and other one is Leishmania. Now, Leishmania is also important for diseases because Leishmania causes a disease called Kala Azar. So this question can also be asked in disease questions, like which disease is caused by Leishmania. So it is Kala Azar. Here, if I'm talking about Leishmania, let me also give you one more organism known as Trypanosoma because it causes sleeping sickness. Okay. Now let's go back to types of binary fission. So one we saw in which the plane of division could be any plane of division, that is irregular binary fission. Then we came back to a binary fission where the plane of division is vertical or longitudinal, that we call longitudinal binary fission, and the example of this type of division is Euglena and Leishmania. Now we go through a transverse binary fission where the plane of division is what we can say vertical horizontal. It will be horizontal or transverse, and the organism which shows this type of binary fission is known as paramecium. Now we have talked about binary fission. Let's talk about what will happen if the parent will divide into more than two daughter cells. In more than two daughter cells, that fission will be known as multiple fission. So one example which has been given in NCERT is paramecium. That is a malarial parasite. And how the division happens, you can see here there is a parent cell. It will divide into multiple daughter nuclei and daughter cells. Further, these daughter cells will be released when the parent body is burst open. And these will again form a whole new individual. So that's how fission works. Let's move on to second type of asexual reproduction, that is budding.